Hello, everyone, and welcome to another In Conversation program with the National Portrait Gallery. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us today on Zoom and via Facebook Live. It's so lovely to see you all coming in for what I'm sure will be a really fascinating conversation. Just a couple of housekeeping tips before we get underway. We do like our programs to be interactive, and we do love faces. So if you happen to be joining us in the Zoom room today, please feel free to leave your cameras on. It's always nice to see all our friendly faces out there from around Australia. Also, if you're joining us on either Zoom or Facebook and you would like to ask any questions of our guest today, please pop them into the chat function on Facebook, the comments function, or in the chat function on Zoom. And I'll do my very best to get as many of those questions through today. Before we get underway, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which I'm broadcasting from today. Here in Canberra, we're so lucky to be on the lands of the Ngambri and Ngunnawal peoples. It's beautiful, beautiful country. And I'd like to extend a warm welcome to any First Nations people who are joining us for this program today as well. So without further ado, let's get underway. These Thursday programs, we've been featuring photographers, professional photographers from around Australia, but who also happen to be good friends of the National Portrait Gallery. And today's program is no exception. Ingvar Kenne has been a friend of the Portrait Gallery for a very, very long time now. And we'll hear a little bit about that during the program. But we have no less than 23 portraits of his in our collection, but also his portraits have featured in the National Photographic Portrait Prize for many years, including winning one of the National Photographic Portrait Prizes. So Ingvar, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Delight. Thank you.
No problems. Should we just dive in? Should we just start?
Yeah.
Sounds great. All right. Well, we've got, we were talking earlier at our tech discussion that we've actually got one of the first photographs that you shot for what has now become the Citizen Project that we'll hear a little bit about during the talk. Do you want to just give us a little bit of background into this first portrait that we're looking at now?
Yeah, that came about. I set out on a global motorcycle trip in '94 and it ended up going on for 2.5 years. And I've traveled with a friend. And we started and finished together, but we kind of separated. So there was a lot of my own time. And I, up to that point, I've been taking photographs for quite some time already. And I studied at university and I felt like there was nothing. I sort of felt like I started things and never finished them. And this trip became quite crucial and important, and start of something that's now gone on for 27 years, is it? But I realized, the context of traveling, which ended up being 35, 40 countries, in order to make these images that you take during that time relate to each other, it became important to have these strict parameters, same format, same lens, same film, and same approach. And I was lucky to have a friend back in Stockholm that, every so often you sent 10 rolls back home. They got developed. A set of contact sheets was sent to some postal stamped address 3 months down the road. So you kind of got an update, 3 months delay back then. And very clearly and very early on, I realized that the thing that kind of gelled the trip for me, and both as a person but visually, was the portraits. So with kind of the help of these contact sheets, it became this narrowed focus on how I would approach these meetings that was all random, and how could you then make them sit together in a cohesive format. And this was the first, well, I like to call it first. I think I've taken 1 or 2 portraits before, but this is after arriving on an oil tanker from Norway and being offloaded in the harbor there in Halifax, Canada. And this guy, Wendell, worked at the dock, and immediately we were invited to his house and ended up staying with him for, 4 or 5 days. And he took us out on a boat, and I kind of like it. It's kind of the first portrait I felt like, oh, this is where it is at, and this is the parameter I will continue with. And I kind of like that he's photographing me while I'm photographing him, and that kind of kicked it all off in '94.
That's incredible. Should we have a look at a couple of others from the Chasing Summer series?
Yeah, there's a few there, I think. Yeah.
So move on. This wonderful girl, Karina.
Yeah, she was a delight. I didn't meet her for long. This was on the outskirts of Lima, and she helped her mother, running this roadside cafe where you got some quick snacks and a refreshment drink. And we had this. My mother, I need to say my Spanish was pretty bad. It got pretty good at the end of 6 months in South America, but the conversation, I don't know much about Karina, but we had a bit of fun with my helmet and playing around. Yeah.
And this format, which as we move through, I think people will start to see the uniqueness of that format. Were you saying that the contact sheets that were being sent to you, that focused it into this sort of square format that has now become sort of signature for you?
It was a square format camera. It was not a Hasselblad, it was a Mamiya 6. So it's sort of the negative you get is square. So I kind of had a liking to that format for a while before this trip. So I'm comfortable within those equal sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I remember cutting out and just do a little diary thing of these contact sheets, and normally I don't like to look back at what I do too much. I like to kind of keep it fresh, but this trip kind of needed this consistency, I felt, in order for me to make sense of it and not try to experiment through this 2.5 years. It felt like I need to just stay in this little tiny space that is my space, and keep going. So the way they approach, I mean, it's portraiture. They look back at camera. It's pretty straightforward, but the context around them was always as important, if not more important sometimes, to find that first and then place the person in that context. That's kind of how I worked since then, I think. And this project is called Chasing Summer, but I feel, to me now, it's part of Citizen, because it's Citizen is kind of later, became another book, but it's the same, same approach, same everything.
Yeah, and we have to give a shout out to this awesome portrait of a cow as well as a human being. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And another one from the Chasing Summer.
Yeah, sort of the homecoming. I was kind of spending 9 months in Australia on this trip, and ended up meeting my wife. We married very quickly, and I left very quickly after, and not for any other reason that I needed to finish this trip. And so I spent 9 months traveling back through the subcontinent and Iran. And this is, again, a random encounter on the top of a pass, I think Gahsa in Iran, heading towards the Black Sea. And she's a traveler with her husband. They were going on a holiday trip to the inland sea themselves. So a random portrait. Don't know much more than her name. I liked it though. It was kind of huggies, nappies in the boot, and all very strangely normal at the time. Yeah.
Brilliant. Should we have a little jump now to some of the works, the portraits that you have? You have made a selection of those that we have in the Portrait Gallery collection, and then we'll come back to have another chat about this mammoth citizen project. The first one we wanted to have a little look at is Annalise Zuber.
Yeah, so when I landed in Australia back in Australia in 96 after this trip, there was no inn. So I ended up waiting tables for 3 or 4 years in Melbourne, and slowly, get in touch with magazines of trying, and it took a long time, but I did get a break with Australian Style at the time to take a portrait. And the next gig was, oh, hang on, we like how you take portraits, because all I had to show was a box of Kodak prints from Chasing Summer. That was the extent of my pitch document. So this editor, Mark Mordew, took a punt, I think, and just said, let's just have you do a fashion story with this model, Annalise Zuber. So I had no idea what I was doing beyond taking portraiture, but it was a portrait fashion story over 10 pages. And yeah, that hangs in the National Portrait Gallery. I think this image, yes. So
yes, it does. Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started for me here, I think.
And this is one of the first early portraits that you took when you came back to Australia, is that right?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years when I did nothing more than waiting tables. And then I think I had a different aspiration then, or wanting to do, because I had, in Sweden, I've had, a couple of work grants, arts grants and exhibitions, and I kind of want to stay in that world. But reality set in that no one really wants to know about that here, what I've done. It was like I could not get anywhere with that. So I kind of started, okay, I better take photographs again and approach magazines with this box of prints. And that's kind of how it sort of started.
Mm-hmm. And another famous face in the National Portrait Gallery collection.
Yeah, he's probably one of my favorite subjects ever. We hung out for 4 hours at his manager's office in North Sydney, and they didn't have the water view in Mossman, so they painted it, and that became one of the portraits that day. But yeah, lovely experience. And for the first 10 years, a lot of my portraiture were assignment, or the bulk of it. I took portraits, random encounters like Chasing Summer style, but a lot of the work came out of assignments, shooting musicians or models or priests, I don't know, prime ministers, all sorts.
Yeah.
And kind of it. And it was never meant to be like Citizen was never meant to be. I feel like the advent of digital, I don't know when that was, kind of late mid 2000, when I couldn't fight for the reason of shooting with this camera anymore, when they all wanted digital files, and I kind of gave up on editorial then, because it felt like I can't take the photos I want to take, and I don't want to put my name on this, and so that's when I started looking back on the work that then became Citizen. So it was 15 years of work there that became the book, and so forth later.
Well, that's a good segue into that Citizen project, but we couldn't go without showing at least one cameo of yourself with Angus.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a good day. Yeah. I just want you to know that I love frisbee. So
that's awesome. You've brought along the Citizen book that was published and was also had its book launch at the National Portrait Gallery along with an exhibition. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, so yes, I said, like I started looking back sort of 2010 roughly, I don't know, and just kind of, oh, well, this is something here again, like this kind of continuous way of approaching people, regardless if it's a commission or if it's me sort of meeting someone randomly. And obviously I was kind of aware of it, but not in the context that I wanted to put it out there in the world. But it felt like a natural end when I stopped working with magazines. And started going through the work and several rounds. And in 2012, you kindly had a show at the National Portrait Gallery, and we launched a book there. I have it here. Do you want to?
Yes, please.
So it's this one here. And then you and I decided from now on we're just going to show work for Citizen that is produced after 2012. So none of that in the book is part of this conversation, but it's an ongoing project.
And we'll get Matt to drop the link into the Citizen book too, so that if anyone's interested, they can go and have a look at that on your website. But shall we dive into some of the more recent Citizen works that people won't have seen published? Necessarily?
Yeah, this is the first portrait after, well, it's actually at the printer in China, so you can see a sheet of the book being printed in China. So I guess that's Yuan Yuanzhou is the first portrait after the book was published, and started the next chapter. It's not really a chapter, but it just started a continuation of the project.
We have a whole series of images that we can work our way through now, but we're not going to do them in chronological order or necessarily even in the various different countries that they were taken. So, and this is something that you do in your Citizen book, isn't it? It's not necessarily in a particular order or categorized in any particular way. Is that deliberate?
Yeah, totally. Yes, it is. I mean, it's kind of a visual sequencing, with the designer at the time, Marcus Piper, was like, I don't know, we did that for 3 years, just laying it out, redoing it. And it's just the flow of the images, I guess, was dictated how it fell on the page rather than anything else. But I guess to me, it's like, I think I just follow my own preset, it's this manual in my head that it's just impossible to ignore. It's like a tick. And the purpose is almost the obsessive doing and continuing this body of work. And, to photograph these incidental moments and spaces that we sort of just happen to converge on. And from that is this elevated, becomes this elevated human connection between us. The camera is such an enabler in that way that you can, I would never approach this. I would never have a conversation with these people, or even, we'd never cross paths, but the camera is kind of the reason we are crossing paths in a sense. And it becomes this, is it taxonomical in some ways? It's just almost like species or specimens, specimens, sorry, that are being documented, I think. And I find it almost a democratic equalizer. There's like no borders and no issues, no sides to take, and seeing eye to eye with people. And for me, it's being a citizen in the world, just being out there and connect with people, strangers.
As we move through these images, people will see, complete strangers, different nationalities, different faces, but they'll also see famous faces as well. Is your approach for everybody pretty much the same, or do you tailor your approach depending on, the particular shoot that you might be at, or how you actually see the people?
I don't tailor it, no. Like, they get the same treatment, Technically, it's very simple. I won't give it away, but photography, you probably know there is nothing to it. I think with an assignment, the addition is that you get thrown into, you got to meet a such and such musician, or, in this motel room, or, could be anything. I mean, it's been a while since that's happened. So if it's a famous person, but the approach is the same. Like, I need to find the space so I always there early, and it's always about the space that I need to fill. And so by the time comes that this famous person turns up, I kind of already know what I want to do and where I want to place them. But they're not long shoots. Once I find my thing, I don't really care beyond that, and the shoot is very quick. I shoot the same photograph over and over a couple of rolls, and then they can go and I can go, and I'll pick one out of that. It's really that simple. Yeah.
And do you mainly work with natural light, or do you take much other equipment with you when you're sort of roaming around, or is it basically just the camera and work with what you have?
The light is important. It's available light, and then I have a field flash. You can see this in this portrait. It's stronger because I'm shooting into the sun, so you can see the front flash, but it's just a simple flash on top of the camera. So the equipment is small, and I just try to balance that, lift the subject off the page a little bit, and all the way back in '94, that's what I traveled with, a little pop flash, and yeah, it's that simple.
We've got
Bob Hawke was. I met him. He's the face of a beer company, so that was quite recent, obviously before he passed away. But yeah, that was 5 shots, and then he had enough. So that's it. Yeah.
And here are a couple of subjects that are very familiar to you.
Yeah, it's my dad, Busse, Boo. Quite a big time in his and mum's lives. This is the family childhood home where I lived since I was 8 till I left home. So they were moving out in 2018. So I went back to just help move some boxes around, and it was very stressful for them, I think, because they've been there for a long time and downsizing, and yeah, I can see it on my dad's face and my mum too.
Mm.
Yeah, but special place. That's the backyard I roamed around in.
Is there, last week when we spoke to Nikki Toole, she was talking about this concept that she had where she asked people to actually think about a particular thing when she took the photo. So there was a certain expression that she was aiming for from that. When you approach your subjects or when you photograph your subjects, do you have a particular conversation style or ask them to actually think about particular things, or is it basically just trying to capture them as they are in their environment?
Yeah, I don't ask them. And I mean, I ask them, I want to know who they are. And if we have a shared language, which I didn't have with this woman, Chin Lai, I do, it's a conversation, but in this case, it was no conversation, lifting the camera, and she realized I want to take the photograph, and she paused.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I like people. I'm really interested in people, but I don't think I don't think I can portray something particular about people, really. I think it's mostly in the eye of the beholder of the person who ends up looking at the photographs, and myself included. Because in a lot of the cases, I can't claim to know anything about most people I've photographed.
Mm.
I do have a great human interest, but for me, the photograph is it's all about the photograph. Mm-hmm. And it's not mean that I'm rushing in to take something from them. I think, we're gentle with each other, and I often send pictures if I can. If I get an email address, it's always an exchange after the fact. But for me, the photograph is the absolute, and I don't know how to say it, really. Let's move on to the next picture, and I might come
sure.
back.
Well, this is a familiar environment to a lot of Australians after 2020's events.
Yes. Quite a horrendous couple of days. I was camping down not far from there, Mimosa Rock National Park, and I had a wrap at the tent. We had the wrap at the tent at 2 a.m, get out. The fire, I think it was the Kumbaga fire. And packed up everything and rushed, and was pushed towards Eden Sports Ground, I think, and there was 4,000 other people there coming from all over. And this is David, and his wife Margaret was next to him, and we just ended up being neighbours on this day, New Year's Eve, 2019.
And fellow evacuees. Yeah,
that's earlier that morning, and tragic story. Like Emily and Dan was on a holiday on the coast as well. It wasn't a great holiday for anyone, but he also that morning had got a call from his dad that the farm had burnt down. Everything was gone, livestock and his prized car collection that he'd been tinkering with. I can't remember where it was. It was across the mountain towards, west of there. So this is 10 a.m, and he's telling me this story that he'd lost everything, really. Yeah. And then he was on holiday and nowhere to go. So it was tough times.
And there's no way of mistaking that sky. It's so familiar to so many of us.
Yeah.
So we'll head to jump around a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Some others.
This is just he's is a publisher, a journal publishing in Sweden, and he's the one who ended up publishing The Ball, which we'll get to later, which is the last book I published in 2018. Yeah, so that's a printer in Denmark. A friend, Isabella, she's a photographer in Sydney.
I think for me, and this is what struck me when I was looking through your images, is your eye for detail. As you say, you sort of almost pick the environment before the person happens to wander into the shot. But there's just so much detail in these images, and some of the detail is really quite bizarre or odd or intriguing. I mean, for me, the first thing I spotted was the tiger in the cage, and then there's a sign and there's air conditioning and the fan. It's all these things that kind of combine to it's almost like a film set in some strange way.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it's nothing is added or, you know, it is what, but I guess I'm in that space and I see those, you know, these things coming at you, this fan, and then it's literally, in this case, it was like, who's around?
Yeah.
So I was standing next to me with her husband and kids, and I just said, do you mind just take a portrait? And she just shifted a step and was happy to have a portrait taken. And they come like that. I feel like there's been times when I try to force a portrait, or like, oh, you know, that person looks so interesting, I should really make sure I get a portrait of them. And they almost, you know, you start, you know, call them up, do you want to do a portrait? And I'm thinking this, and they never work.
Yeah.
For me, they always fall short because there's so much thought prior, and they just become this just hyperreal things I'm not interested in. So I've come to realize that drop all preparation. Just don't think about anything. And if it doesn't happen for a month, you don't take a portrait for a month. But if you have the camera with you constantly, the moments will come, and they are the portraits that I end up. That the conversation with those portraits are ongoing for me, and they're, you know, interest for me. They became stayers in my, you know, project, the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is emotional. This is Billy Boxhead. He was my dog, our family dog, but through circumstance I had to rehome him, and I knew Margaret vaguely, but she also is the owner of his brother. And I called her up, sort of asking for tips. You know, I needed to find a new home. And then the next day she calls up and said, I'll take him. So the slight problem was she was living in Kalgoorlie during COVID. And we attempted last Christmas to kind of meet up, and it fell through. And then in February I went across, and her and her partner came across from Kalgoorlie, and we met in Nullarbor Roadhouse. And that was the last day with Billy, my dog. And yeah, that's how that portrait came about. So a 6,000 kilometer trip to find a home for Billy.
But Billy has a good home.
He has probably a better home, let's be honest. And then on the way back, I decided to travel a longer way back through the Gatsagorla Ranges into South Australia and Cooper and this is a portrait of a lovely couple in Kingunya, a town of 10-15 houses, and they ran their caravan park. I mean, some of them, there's some, I don't know. I don't want to, there's some great stories, but I think I'll keep them probably more to myself, because I don't know, for me, it is about, or for everyone else, it should be about the photograph. I don't think, I want them to be less personalized. I don't want people to know too much, because they should have the same value.
Yeah, and for me, that is what's so absolutely breathtaking and intriguing about them. I get drawn into the thong line marks on his feet and things, and how did that car happen to be there? But it's the details and the picture setting that is just so intriguing and draws you in so much. So, and this beautiful couple with the slightly wonky sunglasses, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, it's a story behind that one too, but yeah, me and the kids and my ex, we were traveling around Cambodia, Vietnam, and I kind of rented a motorbike, or Vespa thing, and every morning I was up for 2-3 hours, just try to meet people and take portraits while they slept in. And yeah, these are two guys I came across in this very random place. Yeah, they were lovely.
We do have a question from one of our Zoom participants wondering if it's hard to get people not to pose in an unnatural or a self-conscious way, for example, like a selfie pout or a cheesy grin.
No.
Not hard.
I don't know. As I said, for me, even if I look at other people's work, if the subject matter is emoting too much, I feel like that shuts the image down. You see nothing but that smile, or you see nothing but that frown, or whatever pose they take. So for me, these are slightly glorified passport photos, and that's all I ask for them. You know, I don't. I want them just to look back and not emote, if possible. Something will come back towards the camera, but what that is I don't know what that is. But I want, again, it's about repetition, and it's about being able to line these portraits up somehow after the fact down the road next to each other, where they have this neutral meet with the camera. Sometimes not. Sometimes you grab these other moments. Scratching your eye. There's a good mate in Sweden. We studied together, university, boat captain. Why I was in this dog park is another long story. This kind of daycare center for dogs in Bangkok.
And then a series of a few from Japan.
Yeah, I was lucky to do a couple of jobs there, end of 2019 and 2020. I've never been, always wanted to go to Japan, and ended up staying back a couple of weeks at the time and just travel around a little bit myself. He's just a gardener at the hotel. I ended up staying in Hiroshima. We had a bit of a conversation, and she's the lady who managed the guest house where I was staying, trying to ski. But again, like I was there for 2 days with the previous lady, staying and skiing, and then one afternoon it was just the snow is so heavy, and that cone is there. Well, just rap on the door. Can you come out for 5 minutes? And she thought I wanted her to take my portrait, so she was quite perplexed. But anyway, that's how that came about.
Rose, who's joining us on Zoom, was wondering if there is a sense in which your images are also self-portraits.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. What do I think about portraiture? I think, like, I'm not interested in the audience at all in my work. During the process of doing work, I think it's the most selfish and kind of beautifully selfish thing to be able to do. And be in this world of images that I'm interested in, and that's why am I doing these choices that I do, and why do I have this urge to keep taking these portraits? It's a very personal thing. And then yes, at the end of the day, when you decide to say stock and put them together and you make a book or exhibition, obviously then an audience is going to be involved. But for me, like, if I need to reach my own conclusion with the work and be satisfied. It's almost like I have to make my work iconic for myself. Mm-hmm. Like, they need to, they live with me for a long time. These projects goes on for a long time. And if they keep, staying with me, you take a portrait 10 years earlier and you look at it, and you still kind of get I get something from that. Well, it's a stayer, and I don't know why it stays with me. But then once you then put it together and put it out in the world, it's kind of, yes, it's out there, but I don't think about the audience until that point. And even beyond that point, I don't know what I'm trying to, is there something that I'm trying to say? I'm just trying to do what I do. And if people react to it, it's probably less of my self-portrait and more of it's their relationship to the work that is their thing. My relationship to the work is completely different, and both are okay, I think. Yeah.
You did say when we were asking you to bring along a series of images for this particular chat that it was a bit hard to choose which ones because they were all like your children. So
yes,
all have significance and a power.
Yeah.
This is another image that appeared in one of our Photographic Portrait Prizes. Good old Brad.
Yeah, Brad Gallagher. Yeah, so we'll get to that, but the next project we'll look at is the ball, where I went to a series of BNS balls around the country, and it took me to 10 of them, and it took me to number 9 to realize, oh my God, I haven't even brought my citizen camera along. So I don't have many portraits from that time. And that, excuse me, that was one of the last 2. I went to a grand portrait of Brad's. Yeah.
We'll have a quick look at these last 2 in the citizen set, and then we will move on to the ball. So this is Reg, and what the most recent citizen image, which hot off the press, Delma.
Delma, yeah. Can I talk about Reg? Because it is
of course.
like his. It was it? No, it was a different trip. But anyway, coming back and sort of hitting sunset, and arrived at this, just checked in on the spot, and he came straight up to talk to me, Reg, and the light was fading. And before he had time to say much more, I said, Reg, and this is how he approached me with his camouflage long johns. And I said, I really like your portrait, Reg. And he was so pleasant to deal. And, we photographed, we got 6 frames out of it before I ran out of film. No time to reload, the light was gone. But he, and afterwards we talked at length, and he'd never been asked for his portrait to be taken in his whole life. He was deaf, disability pensioner, just out of a lung cancer operation. His mother just died in this town, Narromine. He inherited some money. He was buying a house for that money in the same town, and he was staying in this motel. Like, it was this amazing story out of this gentle character who approached me. And I find that's what I take away privately. Those extra, like, I remember everything from every portrait. I remember how I felt that day. I remember the weather. I remember the almost, smells, all the senses. When I take photographs and meet people, my senses are just hyper alert, and in between, not so much. And it's just this kind of memory bank. It's almost my own little personal diary, and it's sort of it's. I don't know what comes first. It's sort of part of my life so much that it's. I don't know if the photography or life is so intertwined. Those moments of meeting people. Anyway, I digress.
Not at all. We should have a quick look at the next series, the ball. I reckon for most of these, you can it's one of those kind of evocative series that we'll just move through as you talk about the series. We won't actually pause on any of the photographs because it's something that has to be seen almost as a series as a whole. And it feels, I can smell this experience. And when you were first sending the images through, I was like, oh, it's like one BNS ball that Ingvar's gone and he shot. Turns out it's like, how many? 9 BNS balls?
I believe, yeah.
But I defy anyone to be able to tell which one is which, because they're almost, dear, let's just dive right in. BNS
that was the first one, actually. That's from the first one in Goondiwindi, Queensland. So that's a 12-hour car drive from Sydney. Sleep somewhere along the way, arrive at midday, and then it started. And this is the first one, and it came about. I did a book called Hedgehog and the Hedgehog and the Foxes, which was 48 hours with this adult film star Ron Jeremy. Was very similar nature. This, he was going from party to party with bottles of rum that his face is on, and similar approach. This is shot digitally, by the way, because of the nature of it, but. And I had done karaoke shots, so sort of dabble in images that are on where alcohol is involved. And my friend Simon Harson said you should look into BNS balls, and I've never heard of them. Never came. I've been here a long time, but never heard of them. And so I looked up the first one, and it was mind blowing in every sense. And it was an idea of doing Drunk Australia project, but this felt so uniquely separate and so it became its own thing called the ball. Yeah, and they're strangely repetitive. It is like you're reliving. I've been to 10, and they're all very similar in structure and how they go about things, and felt like I was going back in the past every time I went to one.
They certainly feel very Australian. It would be interesting to see if this is something that other countries have this sort of subculture going on. But
I don't think, like, I had a conversation with Tim Winton who ended up writing it, because I approached him about writing a foreword to the book, and he wrote a very nice letter back of rejection and said, no, thank you. But I included a letter, my letter to him and his letter back to me. And we sort of talking in this letter about, we have midsummer parties in Sweden or crayfish parties. They're similar youth, totally out of control. And you have, I don't know, spring break in America. And what it is, I don't know what it is that I don't understand why. I mean, I do understand why they go on. And I feel like previous generations had possibly more, rituals that was passed down from previous generations, whereas now youth has to still grow up and still become men and women. And through the process of these parties, I think it's almost like an initiation into adulthood, a modern way of doing it, rather than being passed on this knowledge from previous, to be quick and kind of vague about it. But I don't know why they go on. But in this case, you have people who live on farms for 11 months of the year, never seeing much more than their folks and other farm hands, and they get a shot at going to a party 5 hours drive away. They'll take it, and they do that most what they can in that 48 hours, and that's what happens.
And we'll leave the B&S balls on this delightful shot. But we probably have just enough time, another 5 minutes, to talk about your move into movie direction, Ingvar.
Yes.
Would you like to show the trailer first before we start talking about it? Should we do that?
Let's do that, yeah.
Okay, Hector, would you mind screening that short trailer for people to have a sense of the land?
When's the last time you went to the land?
He's really come into his own, He's not the guy you used to know.
I miss you.
You should go. Up to the land, you should go. Be good for you. Both of you.
You're the one who ran off to Hollywood to become a superstar, eh? How'd it go?
Jez, you can talk. There's no one else here. Jane Phillips. You don't ever think about her. She's never getting away from me. She's up in here.
She was scared. She went to the cops. She was scared. And if there'd been a case to answer, then why didn't we?
You fuck my wife, you bring up my fucking daughters, you fucking piss over everything. Nothing's mine.
I get goosebumps watching that trailer. It's such a powerful imagery, powerful story. Can you tell us a little bit about how the project came about?
Yeah, like two friends of mine, Steve and Cameron, who I've known for quite a long time. These two guys, they are the writers and actors in the film. They came with me to this book talk I had with my, me and my partner at the time, up in Wollongong National Park, just as a boys' weekend, and things, spun out of control a bit, and it was a fun boys' weekend. And then 3 months post that trip, they came back to me with a script and said, look, we had this script floating around for couple of years they've been working on, and we decided to rewrite it to sort of take place mainly up where we were, like on the land. And do you want to direct it? And it's that's how it happened. That's 10 years ago. And then we were going back and forth for 3 years, developing the scripts. They wrote it, and we had sort of script developing chats. And then a fourth person, Greg Ferris, came along, who we all knew, or they knew more, but I met him, and he knew everything about filmmaking, and he became the sort of the possibility. Like with him came the possibility we can actually make this film, because he knew about cameras and what we needed to shoot something to look cinematic and be able to screen on the big screen and all these other things. So together we set out to shoot this film over a year and a half, around family life and everything else that goes on, so we shot probably 35 days over the course of that. It could be a 2-hour shoot in the morning if people had to go to work, or we shot a long weekend up on the land, and it's just plodded along. And then after that, it's been a 5-year process of doing the post work, because we never had funding. So we've been doing it with a lot of help of people who knows what, editors and color graders, sound design. It's all come on board and helped us with this film to get it to where it's at.
And do you think that after this experience, you'll be moving into that filmmaking area with your career, or is this something?
I don't know. It was hard because there was no money, but it was also brilliant because there was no money, because you don't need to answer to anything except the creative chapter between 4 friends, in the sense. So it was and it was an amazing experience, and I'll be happy to look at something, but it sort of still feels like I'm working on this film, trying to now, after some festivals, trying to get it out to streaming, and now you sort of, the producer's hat is on, and you try to together we try to find ways of give it life beyond the festival. So you're still working on this film, and I'm doing motion commercially, ads and short documentaries, and yes, I still it's reality, you need to do both, but I'd say my love is photography, and this is a great way of spending my time when I don't do photography. I do like it. It's a totally different thing, obviously. It's a collaboration on a massive scale compared to being you with a camera, and both have its place.
Brilliant. Yeah. I think that might be all we have time for, I'm afraid, although I could sit and listen to stories and look at your photography for hours. It's just, there's so much that I take from it every time I have a look at your work, Ingvar.
Oh, great.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me. It was great. Thank
you. Matt, the wonderful Matt, who's been managing our chat in Zoom and on Facebook, will be dropping links for The Land and various other, the Citizen book and the Ball book, and the website, Ingvar's website. So if you'd like to check out more of Ingvar's work, please do jump on the website and have a look. And until next time, we've got plenty more virtual programs coming up throughout December, and then we're going to take a short break over Christmas. So please block back in your diaries to come back to us late in January, early February, when we kick off our next round of virtual programs next year. Until then, please jump on our website, portrait.gov.au, or follow us on socials at portraitau, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the other programs that are coming down the pipeline. Thank you so much once again for joining us, and we hope to see you online again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.